outrage at the attack on an aid convoy in Syria as the ceasefire collapses.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
The relief lorries were destroyed, 20 civilians were killed. UN officials say the attack could be a war crime.
Just when we think it cannot get any worse, the bar of depravity sinks lower.
Also tonight, how someone in Britain loses money in a bank scam every 15 seconds.
Brangelina no more. Hollywood's golden couple are to split.
And a homecoming for heroes, a triumphant return for Britain's Paralympians.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. World outrage at the appalling events in Syria must be close to exhaustion. But even by the grim standards of that conflict, the attack on a Red Crescent aid convoy is shocking. 18 lorries carrying food and medicine were targeted, 20 civilians killed. The United Nations Secretary-General says the bar of depravity has sunk even lower. His organisation has suspended aid convoys in Syria.
Some aid officials say the attack could constitute a war crime. But both the Syrian government and the Russian allies insist they are not responsible. And tonight, hopes of another ceasefire now lie in tatters, as our international affairs editor, Raghi Omar, reports.
In a war where violations of humanitarian law have become the norm, this airstrike on a vital aid convoy for hungry and exhausted civilians on the outskirts of Aleppo is a new low. This eyewitness from the civilian rescue teams known as the White Helmets described the scene.
More than 20 vehicles, 20 trucks full of food and flour and medicine and pampers and blanket.
The aid worker holds up the remains of nappies meant for babies in the midst of Syria's war. His name is Amir. Immediately as the bombing began, he notified the Red Crescent that their warehouse and the convoy had been hit. They in turn told the Syrian government, but their planes carried on bombing for 8 hours.
This was no accident.
He told me he thinks it was intentional.
The regime still sent aircraft to shield this place. 8 of targeting this place, 8 hours. After 8 barrel bombs, 2 cluster bombs, and the aircraft shield this place with bullets.
By the morning, the hulks of the lorries parked by the roadside where they were ready to go were still smouldering, having been hit within an hour of a week-long truce coming to an end. The convoy bound for Aleppo was being prepared at a Red Crescent warehouse in al-Kabra when it came under attack. 31 lorries full of wheat, winter clothes and medical supplies were due to head to rural areas around the city, where 78,000 people are in need of help. It's claimed helicopters under orders from Assad forces dropped 4 barrel bombs on the warehouse, destroying 18 lorries and also badly damaging a nearby health clinic. The aid was meant for the western part of Aleppo. The situation in the rebel-held eastern part of the city, which has been cut off and besieged for months, is even worse. I spoke with a local professor who's been updating us from the city.
These people don't find anything to eat. Yesterday, exactly 5 people were poisoned by eating outdated food. When the doctors said, "Oh my God, don't you know that these foods were outdated?" They said, "What should we do? We don't have anything to eat."
A little over a week ago, Aleppo's children were enjoying the all-too brief moment of calm the ceasefire brought. Now, they're once again subjected to a conflict in which all sides seem not to care who is wounded or killed.
Well, the attack has been widely condemned, not least at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, where the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon had this to say.
Just when we think it cannot get any worse, the bar of depravity sinks lower. Yesterday's sickening, savage, and apparently deliberate attack on a UN Syrian Arab Red Crescent aid convoy is the latest example.
And Raggy is here now. Raggy, all very depressing. Where does this leave talk of ceasefires and hopes of peace?
Well, I think the sense of utter frustration in Ban Ki-moon's voice should give the answer, which is nowhere, to be honest with you. He went on to say in that speech that the many governments that were sitting around that sort of gilded halls at the UN had blood on their hands because of their support for President Assad, that there was no military solution. I think that's been quite clear for a long time, and we're as far away from any political or diplomatic semblance of talks, let alone peace, as we have been. This is a war that's going to continue, I think, 10, 15, 20 years, because the rules of war have been ignored. And the reason why you have the rules of war is that when wars end, there's a sense in which people can come together because the utter depravity of which he was talking about hasn't been crossed. So, you know, President Obama was there and, you know, was hoping to leave with some semblance, something for his legacy, but he doesn't.
Doesn't look like it now. Raggy, thank you very much indeed.
Theresa May is due to make her maiden speech to the United Nations later tonight. And on the world stage, the Prime Minister is expected to make the case for a post-Brexit Britain. Our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Shipp, is at the UN headquarters in New York. So, Chris, any sense of how her speech is likely to be received?
Well, Mary, the maiden speech has been massively delayed. That's quite normal here. She's in a queue behind lots of other world leaders. But we're looking to this speech to find out what are Theresa May's foreign policy priorities, other, of course, than the big one, that is Brexit. And I believe she might give us some indication about where she thinks UK money and UK military should be deployed under her premiership. That said, she's not been able to escape the issue of Brexit here. President Obama's speech, which was his very last at the UN General Assembly, warned against populism and tribalism. Now, the subtext of that, some people here reckon, of course, he was referring to Donald Trump, but also he was referring to Britain's decision to leave the European Union. So quite a lot for her to address here. She also has, quite importantly, a meeting with the Iranian President Rouhani, and it's thought she may well raise the issue of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, the British woman who's currently facing jail in Iran.
Chris Shipp in New York, thank you.
Now here, the number of people falling victim to financial scams online or on their mobiles is growing alarmingly. On average, every 15 seconds, someone in the UK is duped by card, cheque, mobile or online payment fraud.
Well, to put that into perspective, since we've been on air, there have been 31 scams. A new campaign is urging people to protect themselves by thinking twice before they hand over their financial details. Here's our consumer editor, Chris Choi.
Hello. I'm calling from the Metropolitan Police. There's been some suspicious activity on your account.
A police reconstruction of typical fraud. But if you don't think of yourself as a typical scam victim, beware. New figures today show the sheer scale of this problem.
Well, I've just had a text from my bank saying they need to check some account activity, and this looks genuine.
But it's fake, and here at the banking industry's anti-fraud unit, with its stockpile of captured counterfeit cards and scammers' tools, an investigator showed me how it's done.
I use this device, which is commonly available. If I know who you bank with, which I did, if I know your mobile number and your name, which fraudsters do know, then yeah, I can send you a text purporting to be your bank, and it will attach itself to the string of texts you've had from your bank, and you'll believe it.
Patrick Cornwell thought his bank were calling him, but it was fraudsters who took over £3,000.
It was utterly convincing. Everything that they said, they knew the bank's internal processes, they knew things I knew about the bank, having been a customer for 30 years for this bank. You know, there's things that they said and the words and terminology they used that was incredibly knowledgeable, well set up and very professionally done.
Today, new figures showed in the first 6 months of this year, there were over 1 million incidents of financial fraud, a 53% increase on the same period last year. But the number of attempts is far higher. Banks say they stop 70% of scams. Jake Herger responded to a text, which turned out to be the start of a scam, where criminals took over £200 from his account.
Just make sure you're constantly secure, make sure that you don't reply to anyone's message you don't understand, and take 5 minutes to double check, is this a good idea to do?
Take 5 to stop fraud.
The advice to pause before sharing personal information is the basis for this new anti-fraud campaign launched today. It's the first time all banks and big finance firms have joined together this way. The message is stark. If we don't take the time, fraudsters could take a lot more. Chris Choi, ITV News.
And since we've been on, since Chris's report has been on air, there have been another 10 scams. Well, if you'd like to know how to prevent yourself becoming a victim, go to our website, itv.com/news, where we have tips on how to protect yourself from those scammers.
Now, in other news, former Prime Minister Tony Blair has announced he's winding down his business empire. He's come in for criticism in the past for the millions of pounds his commercial ventures have generated since he left frontline politics in 2007. He says he'll now be concentrating on charity work.
And the Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron today praised the former Labour leader during his conference speech, saying his party can be the new Blairites. He said the Labour Party had left the stage under Jeremy Corbyn and that only the Lib Dems could provide strong Tory opposition.
And a crunch meeting of Labour's ruling committee is tonight deciding on a proposal that could heal the party's deep divisions. Deputy Leader Tom Watson wants MPs and union members to have more of a say. Leader Jeremy Corbyn, though, does not agree. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is outside the meeting in central London this evening. Carl, what are you hearing?
Well, they've been in there for nearly 7 hours and I hear they haven't even started to vote on the most contentious stuff. Those are the proposals Tom Watson came here with. 2 big missions: to change the way the shadow cabinet is chosen and to change the way the leader is chosen. Now, the shadow cabinet is the slightly easier bit. After a bad summer, it's widely agreed that needs to change. This is how Mr. Watson put it before he went in.
Labour's had a very bruising summer. We're going to have a leader elected on Saturday. We need to put the band back together. And my proposal today is that the parliamentary party comes back together. We have reforms that mean we have an elected shadow cabinet, not an appointed shadow cabinet.
Now, who elects them is up for grabs, whether it's just MPs or also members. The difficult thing for Mr. Watson is changing how the leader is elected. He wants to get away from that system that chose Jeremy Corbyn and get back to the old system where MPs and unions and members each have a say. Jeremy Corbyn and his people don't like that idea, and if they can kick it down the road, there's a good chance they'll be able to see it off altogether. So this party that's meeting here tonight, they know that they have to find a way to reach agreement. They just can't agree on what that way is.
So on it goes. Carl, thanks very much indeed.
Still to come, the ITV Evening News.
Bogota. 5 years ago.
6. One of the world's most famous couples are to divorce after 12 years together.
And a hornet that poses a huge threat to the honeybee has arrived here for the first time. Those stories and more right after the break.
Welcome back. It seems Hollywood's most famous marriage is over tonight after Angelina Jolie filed for divorce from Brad Pitt. In legal documents, she cited irreconcilable differences. She's apparently not happy with how he parents their 6 children. Here's Martha Fairley on the end of Brangelina.
Describe how you first met.
It was in Colombia.
Bogota. 5 years ago.
6.
This is where it all started for Hollywood's biggest celebrity couple in 2004 while filming Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Over the next 12 years, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie became a brand so powerful they have their own nickname, Brangelina.
I love my wife, but there are times.
There's this huge space between us, and it just keeps filling up with everything that we don't say to each other.
But now it seems the super couple's story has come to an end. Angelina Jolie filed for divorce yesterday, citing irreconcilable differences. Court documents show their separation date is last Thursday. Jolie, seen here with one of the couple's 6 children, is seeking full physical custody and is reported to be upset by Pitt's parenting methods.
Brangelina has made it clear that she wasn't happy with the direction that Brad wanted to take in terms of the parenting of their 6 children. She was unhappy with aspects of his lifestyle. There had been rumours of an affair, of drug abuse, of alcohol abuse, and I think in the end it became impossible to see this marriage working.
The couple married in 2014, a year after Brangelina announced she was carrying a breast cancer gene and had a double mastectomy. And speaking to ITV News, she praised Brad for his support.
I'm very, very fortunate. He's a great man and a great father.
He's a man without fault. Can this be true?
Oh, no man is without fault, but I've got my own. So his faults balance mine. I'll be able to get around the way.
She used her celebrity to promote humanitarian work as a UN Special Envoy, highlighting issues including violence against women and the plight of refugees.
You're nothing.
But the couple last worked together on By the Sea. Released last November, it was a film about an unhappy couple. Art, it seems, was reflecting real life after all. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Now, bee-eating hornets have been spotted in mainland Britain for the first time. The Asian hornets, which are already widespread in France, were seen in Tetbury in Gloucestershire.
Apparently they'd bite off honeybees' heads and then they'd take their honey. And now it's a race against time to eradicate them, as our science correspondent Alok Jha explains.
As if there aren't enough pressures on our nation's bees, today experts confirmed a fearsome new predator, the Asian hornet. These are already widespread in large parts of France, killing bees and eating their honey. Beekeepers in the UK had hoped the hornet wouldn't be able to cross the channel. Over the summer, they'd reached Jersey and Alderney. Now they've been found here, a surveillance area just outside Tetbury in Gloucestershire. Large areas of the countryside here are part of Prince Charles's Highgrove estate.
We've been expecting this hornet for some time, so that's why we've got a very extensive plan to deal with it. So on the first finding, we've initiated our emergency response plan, and now we're trying to find the nest that it belongs to so that we can destroy it.
The Asian hornets don't pose any new risks to people, but they could have a devastating impact on the UK's ecology. Bees are already under threat from viruses and pesticides. Just a handful of hornets could destroy an entire honeybee hive.
Our honeybees are not in any way adapted to dealing with this. They haven't met this enemy before. If there's a mass attack on a colony, that will be very destructive and can bring it down quite quickly.
So far, scientists have only found 1 live and 1 dead Asian hornet. They'll now conduct DNA tests to work out where they came from, to stop them before they wreck Britain's bees. Alok Jha, ITV News.
And finally, Britain's most successful Paralympics team for a generation returned home today to a hero's welcome. There were so many winners, 2 planes were needed to take them all to Heathrow Airport.
Yes, many arrived sporting some of the 64 gold medals Britain won during the Games. Waiting for them were family, friends, fans and our reporter, Sally Lockwood.
It was the homecoming of champions, and as Paralympics GB touched down at Heathrow, their first sense of the country's pride came from air traffic control.
Could you pass our congratulations to all on board? It's been a fantastic show in Rio.
That'll be our pleasure. We're very, very proud to bring them home.
The celebrating began on board, as did the photo calls, and perhaps a little surprise, Dame Sarah Storey received first-class treatment, now the most decorated female Paralympian of all time.
I can't believe I'm sat here in 4F. Been told this is the seat Madonna chooses, so I feel very, very fortunate.
The in-flight entertainment was provided by gold medalist table tennis champion Will Bailey, but it was back to reality for him with a lost luggage claim and reluctant goodbyes to teammates.
Seeing people go home, some people sad, some people overjoyed, you know, it's a strange mix of emotions.
But it's not over yet, you've still got to find your luggage.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I'm worried about.
Thankfully, the silverware made it back okay. Kadina Cox, home to her family with world records in athletics and cycling, becoming Paralympic royalty in record time.
This time 2 years ago, I was in hospital, and at that point I couldn't even walk, let alone kind of run and cycle. So to be here with 4 medals around my neck, yeah, it's crazy. I couldn't have dreamt of this moment even if I tried.
But the winners aren't all medalists. Former Marine Commando Joe Townsend fought from the brink of death all the way to the Paralympics.
I didn't know if I was ever going to get off the battlefield alive, and then, yeah, being here 8 years later, competing at the peak of physical health, representing my country once again, fighting for my flag, and yeah, coming home a Paralympian. I mean, it's really surreal, but yeah, a fantastic journey.
And now emotional reunions for our Paralympic heroes who inspire future generations and make the country so proud. Sally Lockwood, ITV News.
I think Madonna should want Sarah's stories.
Absolutely. Let's get a sense of perspective here, shall we? That's all for now. Tom Bradby's here with News at 10.
But from all of us, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.